All right, we're back. For this video, I want to talk a little bit about Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. We left off the last part. Hopefully, you watched the video on Emmett Till, but before that, we left off talking about segregation in the South, Jim Crow laws, and how blacks and whites were kept separate. And the biggest area where we saw concern, many people saw concern with the whole system, but as far as some concern among whites and especially among African Americans was the school system. Okay, and that's why I showed you this picture of the Southern Negro School compared to, wrong way, this one. Okay, this is Little Rock Central High School. I chose this picture because later on we'll talk about something that happened in Little Rock in 1957. But for now, we're looking at the year 1954, and the NAACP had been pushing to challenge segregation in court since 1909 without a landmark ruling that really said it's done. Remember 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson said that it was okay. So African Americans began challenging those rulings. And in 1954, there was a landmark case called Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. All right. So let's scroll down here. This is also in your worksheet, study guide / part 1 worksheet right here. Okay. And it comes with a couple questions that I want you to think about. So let's go through this together. So what happens, here's the case. Linda Brown, a young girl from Topeka, Kansas, African American, lives close to a white school, but because she's black, she can't go to that school because of segregation. So she is forced to walk several blocks across dangerous territory. In one case, it's a railroad switching yard where trains are moving along in several layers of tracks, and it's very dangerous. And her parents sue and say she should be allowed, since the school is 2 blocks away, to go to that school. And the school board says, no, you can't because you're African American and it's an all-white school. So they take it to court. Okay. Gets all the way to the Supreme Court. Sort of like Plessy versus Ferguson did back in 1896. Okay. Well, this is now 1954, May 17th. The Supreme Court issued this, what they call landmark decision on this case. And here's what they said. And I'll read right down here. You can follow along. Okay. A landmark Supreme Court decision was made on May 17th, 1954. Chief Justice Earl Warren, in delivering the opinion, said, the segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race, even though the physical facilities and other tangible factors may be equal, deprive children of the minority group of equal educational opportunities. We believe it does. To separate them from others of similar age and qualifications solely because of their race generates a feeling of inferiority as to their status in the community that may affect their hearts and minds in a way very unlikely ever to be undone. So here's the big part right here. This is the quote that's always used for describing this ruling. It says, we conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. And here it is. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The word inherently is tricky, but what it means is that just by having separate facilities for black students and white students, you are telling society that they're not the same, that they're not equal. Even if the schools were perfectly the same, identical copies of each other, which they were not, but if they were, it still says that it's not fair, it's unequal, it's not right. This was a big deal. This had not happened yet in American history. So now, all of a sudden, there is a ruling in favor of African Americans who are pushing for equality in this country. And it is seen as a major opportunity. African Americans are excited about this. They are seeing a chance to say, you know what? We can do something. The courts might actually listen. Somebody out there might actually rule in our favor. And this sort of opens the door for new opportunities. That's why this case is so important. in the grand scheme of things, it was narrowly focused on segregation in schools. But if you can break down segregation in one area, maybe you can break it down in another. And that's where the movement comes in. That's why if you want to, like textbooks like to do, if you want to bookend the civil rights era, it's 1954 through 1968. Now, is that the entire era? Absolutely not. But what they're looking at is May 17th, 54 is Brown versus the board, so that's the one end. And 1968 is the year Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated, so that's the other end. Now, was there stuff before that and after? Heck yeah, still is. But that's kind of the unit that we look at as well. Okay? So the beginning of that big moment is 1954, Brown versus the board. So there's a couple questions for you to answer after that to finish up this assignment. What did Brown versus the Board of Education say about separate but equal? Hint, hint, hint. It's right here. Right over here. Okay? And then what effect do you think events like the murder of Emmett Till and the Supreme Court's decision to outlaw segregation in public schools, what do you think those events had on the effect they had on African Americans in the South? And I kind of summed that up with the ruling. But again, think about how they must have felt with the frustration over the justice system with Emmett Till and what happened there. But yet at the same time, the Supreme Court was inspiring them to take action. So there's a couple things that relate there. So see if you catch it in the video on Emmett Till. It says at the very end, Fred Shuttlesworth is the guy that's talking at the very end, and he talks about the effect of Emmett Till's case on the African American community. And I sort of talked about the effect of Brown versus the board. So pay attention. You can answer that question. And then the last one's for you to think about. What do you think how do you think white Southerners reacted to the court ruling? Okay. The Supreme Court's ruling. So we're talking about Brown versus the board. How do you think they felt about it? And you just figure it out. But watch the videos, answer the questions. You can complete this whole thing from the information I gave you on Classroom, for everywhere from the terms to the question about Jim Crow laws to Brown versus the board. Well, Emmett Till also. Okay? And if you have any questions, send me an email, Zoom at 10 to noon every day, or whenever. If you want to get a hold of me and you want to Zoom, send me an email and we'll make a time to do it. Okay? But what you should get, hopefully by the time you're done with all of this, are these two big ideas. Life for African Americans in the Jim Crow South, and explain the significance of events like the Brown decision and the beginning of the civil rights movement. So good luck. Pay attention on the videos. Watch them all. And I will talk to you soon.